carburetors, man. That's what life is all about.
Welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I've got three, I'll put that where you can see it, three midnight movies. Now, midnight movies were an interesting phenomenon, mostly of the 20th century. They were the cult films that Encore cinemas showed at midnight showings, usually in a double feature which ended at a ridiculously late time of night. It was a time when these cinemas could show transgressive things to an audience that self-selects as being a bunch of weirdos. Of course, the ultimate midnight movie is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Tim Curry has been reported as saying that he loves the fact that it showed on midnight cinemas because it kept a lot of cinemas going at a time when TV and video were taking over the industry and the cinemas were closing en masse. But I'm not going to talk about Rocky Horror Picture Show with this one. I'm going to talk about three other movies. One I kind of think should be a midnight movie, and two that are immensely enjoyable midnight movies in their own right. So I've got three of them for you, and let's get started. Viavision Australia sent me this one for free as a review copy, and I'm happy they did. It's not the best movie in the world, but it is silly, it's funny, it's transgressive. It's a weird little thing that everybody kind of knows about, but not many people have watched lately. A movie from 1989, Weekend at Bernie's. Weekend at Bernie's I like because it is transgressive. It stars Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman as a pair of guys working in an insurance office. Their boss, Bernie Lomax, played by Terry Kaiser, is an asshole. He gaslights them, he takes credit for their work, he's ripping off the company for a lot of money, and he is involved with the mafia. So, bit of a red flag there. When the two guys, Larry and Richard, find out that there's a discrepancy in the accounts, which is the money that Bernie is scooping out of the insurance company, Bernie invites them to his holiday home on Long Island for the weekend so that his mafia friends can knock them off. What he doesn't know is that the mafia boss knows that Bernie is having an affair with the mafia guy's girlfriend, and the intention is that the hitman Paulie can knock him off. Larry and Richard go to Bernie's house not knowing that Paulie has knocked off Bernie with a lethal injection. Richard's starting a relationship with a woman called Gwen, played by Catherine Mary Stewart, and she just happens to have a holiday home on the island as well. So Larry, who's the wild one played by Andrew McCarthy, decides, just because Bernie died doesn't mean we can't have a good weekend. Suddenly a floating house party turns up and they've got to pretend that Bernie's still alive so that their weekend of jollity and licentiousness can continue. Fortunately, whatever Paulie injected Bernie with doesn't allow for rigor mortis, except in one possible very specific location. And the movie continues almost like a French farce with action scenes. The people don't realise that Bernie's dead. They're so self-involved, all of the rich people who come around to visit at Bernie's party. The mafia can't figure out why Bernie ain't dead. Richard and Gwen are trying to start a relationship. So over the 2 days of the weekend, more complications build up, and it turns into exactly the kind of silliness you need in a movie at certain times. You feel a bit down, you want to watch something that'll pick you up a little bit. A movie like Weekend at Bernie's is going to do that for you. It's familiar, it's nostalgic in a way. There's lots of baggy suits and mobile phones the size of house bricks, and brutalist architecture. Bernie's house, which was built specifically as a set for the movie, is pretty ugly. It's 1980s kind of glass brick tiles on the inside. Brutalist architecture, ugly. It's a wonderful thing. It kind of, in a sense, reflects Bernie's personality to an interesting degree. Now, this is a very bare bones one from Viavision, and that's okay. This is the first time it's been on Blu-ray in Australia, and all you get is a theatrical trailer. It's priced right for that kind of a release, and Viavision are digging deep into the catalogues they can get available and putting these things out, and they're going to make some money on them. Now, for me, the most interesting thing about the movie is that it was directed by Ted Kotcheff. So, Weekend at Bernie's is directed by the same guy who created the archetypal Australian noir film Wake in Fright. Ted Kotcheff was a Canadian, and I like the fact that he is such a versatile director that he could do Wake in Fright, which is brutal about the toxic masculinity of Australian males, and then he goes on with this, which has got a dead toxic white male in it, but otherwise is incredibly funny. It stands up well. There's not a lot that's really kind of cringy from a modern viewpoint. There's a little bit of the male gaze about beautiful women. There's a scene of accidental necrophilia, which is very funny. And it was a good reef watch for me. And I haven't seen Weekend at Bernie's 2 since VHS days, and I'm kind of not inclined to seek it out. But if Viavision do release it and send me a copy, I'm more than happy to review it. Weekend at Bernie's, try it out if you haven't seen it for a while. If it turns up on one of your streaming services, you're not going to be really wasting an hour and a half, 2 hours of your life just enjoying this one once more. Now, I'm doing the other two in the ascending order, so the next one's pretty good. The last one is the one that I think, for me at least, leaving aside Rocky Horror Picture Show, is the ultimate midnight movie. A lot of people disagree, but for me, it hits all of my sweet spots. The second one, which is still pretty good and a lot of fun and really commits to its world building and its concept in an interesting way. It's from 1988. It was directed by Stephen Chiodo and produced and written with his two brothers, Charles and Edward. Of course, it's Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Now, some people have a phobia about clowns. I can understand being a little bit kind of wary of them because you don't know who's under the makeup. And John Wayne Gacy really spoiled it for every good-hearted clown in the world. But Killer Klowns from Outer Space is really great. Small town, an alien spaceship that looks like a circus tent lands, and a group of cannibalistic aliens that look like clowns emerge from the circus tent and start rampaging through the town. This movie cannot be taken seriously by anybody, which is good. It's funny. The dogs that the clowns use to track human beings are actually balloon animals. They've got weird weapons like a popcorn gun. They can encase people in cocoons that look like fairy floss, or as Americans call it, cotton candy. And it really does build a really crazy world. Now, the Chiodo brothers were special effects guys, and they had $2 million to make the movie, and most of that went into production costs and getting a couple of older character actors to do some of the smaller roles. They got John Vernon, who of course people remember from Animal House, and if you're really a cinephile, from Point Blank. And they also got Roald Dano, which is a kind of a nice haul. They're good, solid characters. They did certain kinds of roles very well. Killer Klowns from Outer Space I love because the idea is insane. It's got a slight trauma kind of vibe about it without going to the excesses of trauma. And it's one of those movies that was produced for that VHS era and produced specifically to be a cult film, and I think it succeeded. There are three kinds of movies that end up being cult films. They're the ones that people took seriously but are just so off the charts that people embrace them as cult films. There are the ones that deliberately try to be cult films and kind of fail, like the Killer Tomatoes movies. And there are movies like Killer Klowns from Outer Space where the Chiodo brothers tried to make a cult film, a midnight movie, and succeeded because they knew their audience, they knew how to make films, they did all sorts of things like forced perspective, and they did some stop motion animation. They did a lot of practical effects because that was their field of expertise. And they created a really mad and really fun little film. It doesn't outstay its welcome to. It's not particularly a long film. And this one is from Cinema Cult here in Australia. And surprisingly enough, it has some extras in it. Cinema Cult is usually a bare bones studio. They tend to not do a lot of extras on it. But this version on Blu-ray of Killer Klowns has got an audio commentary with the Chiodo brothers, 5 featurettes, it doesn't say on the back what they are, deleted scenes, bloopers, storyboard gallery, and theatrical trailers. And I'll ask whatever you think about this is, it's got a kaiju in it. And I like the ratings they put in this. Moderate levels of violence, language, or themes. The usual Australian kind of warning there. If you consider drinking people like a soft drink out of a great big cocoon full of cotton candy to be mild, yeah, I'd agree with it. But yeah, that one's definitely a recommend for me. Go for it. The last one is my favourite Brian De Palma film. Not the best Brian De Palma film necessarily, but my favourite. It's from 1974, so you know it's good. It is Phantom of the Paradise. Phantom of the Paradise, if you haven't got the album, you should get it if you're collecting vinyl at all. Fantastic soundtrack written by one of the stars of the movie, Paul Williams, who plays Swan, the unscrupulous and demonic record executive. And this movie is quite scathing about the record industry in a very fun way. And Phantom of the Paradise, it's not the Phantom of the Paradise, it's Phantom of the Paradise, is great because what De Palma does is he mashes up 3 different intellectual properties from 3 very different times. The first one is Faust, of course, Christopher Marlowe, around the same time as Shakespeare. And then it also adds in the Phantom of the Opera, Gaston Leroux's story about a disfigured man in the bowels of the Paris Opera who inspires and trains a beautiful young singer. Then it also adds Oscar Wilde's The Portrait of Dorian Gray, just for a little extra soupçon there. But all in a modern context, and all with some incredible music pastiches and satires in them. There's nothing not to love about this film. In it, William Finley plays Winslow Leach, a musical composer who creates a Faust cantata as a serious piece of music. He takes it to Swan, who is the biggest record producer in the world. Think of him like Phil Spector, but shorter and with more hair. He's played by Paul Williams. While he goes to see Swan, he meets Phoenix, played by Jessica Harper, a young singer who really understands Winslow's music. Winslow gets there and the music is presented to Swan, and then Swan steals it, frames Winslow for a drug bust, gets him put in jail where he is experimented on, has his teeth replaced with steel teeth. He goes insane, escapes from prison. He goes to Swan's facility for producing records and accidentally gets disfigured by a record press. He then goes and hides in Swan's Theatre of the Paradise and becomes the Phantom of the Paradise.
Bad guy wins.
Never sing my music again. Anyone else that tries dies.
Swan then gets him to sign a contract in blood, which is a contract with the devil, linking him to Swan and allowing Swan to produce Winslow's music and for Winslow to help him with it. Things don't end well for anybody. But the joyous heart of this film is the music. And the music is hilariously funny as well as being at times serious and incredibly mutable as well. There are several different versions of some of the songs as Swan mutates and kind of commercializes Winslow's music. At the start, you got Goodbye Eddie Forever, sung by Swan's group The Juicy Fruits, where Archie Hahn plays the lead singer, and Goodbye Eddie Goodbye is fantastic because it's a satire of those kind of teenage death songs of the 1960s. It really stands on its own as well. The story's great. It has an interesting narrative arc. It leans into that teen angel morbidity that went through popular music in the early 60s, Leader of the Pack, that kind of thing. It is really funny. And then, of course, there's Faust. He adapts one of Winslow's songs to The Juicy Fruits, a song called Upholstery, which I love a lot. Special to Me, which Jessica Harper sings really well. The Phantom's theme, Somebody Super Like You, which is sung by the very gay Beef character played by Gerard Graham in a way that parallels the Rocky Horror Picture Show in some ways. And the Juicy Fruits end up looking like Kiss extras. Life at Last, which is also portrayed by Gerard Graham, though a guy called Ray Kennedy did the singing voice for Gerard Graham in that. The Hell of It, Never Thought We'd Get to Meet the Devil. This soundtrack is one of the underappreciated soundtracks of the 1970s movies. All of the music is written by one guy. It's portrayed really well visually, and De Palma's camera moves around a lot. It's filmed really well. There are some split screen stuff where you see the action from a few different angles, particularly when Winslow puts a bomb in a car that's part of one of the stage props. It's joyously wonderful fun. I saw it first in the 70s, and to this day I like it more than I like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think that there's more versatility in the music. I think the satire is a lot more biting. There's deep cuts of using Faust, Dorian Gray, and Phantom of the Opera as source material for a modern rock musical is inspired genius. I love what it does. I love the way it does it. And De Palma's direction and the cinematography are wonderful. And it's really great that there is this Blu-ray now put out by Arrow, which has a lot of extras in it, including a booklet about the movie, and I'm a big fan of booklets, as you know. There's one of the production stills. There's Winslow talking with Swan. And there are a whole bunch of disc extras as well. Let me put this away. There's the inside. There are a lot of disc extras as well. Let's have a look there. It's a 1080p transfer. A 50-minute documentary of the making of the film, featuring Paul Williams, Jessica Harper and Gerard Graham. A 72-minute interview with Paul Williams by Guillermo del Toro. See the Swan Song Fiasco, a new video piece exploring the changes made to the film in post-production. Archive interviews with costume designer Rosanna Norton. And by the way, the set decorator in this movie was Sissy Spacek. The production designer was her boyfriend at the time, William Fisk. And Sissy Spacek was the set dresser for The Phantom of the Paradise. There are alternate takes and bloopers. William Finley gets a go in there. And a whole bunch of others. So this one is replete with extras. And if you can get a copy of it, I highly recommend you do. It is Region B, so you need to be aware of that. But for me, this is a definitive edition of this, unless Criterion puts out something, which I'm not sure they will. I'm going to rewatch this one soon because I just love it. I'm also going to play the album when I get my new Ultimate Midnight Movie. No questions asked. Let me know what your Ultimate Midnight Movies are too, because a lot of people like Eraserhead, a lot of people like Freaks. There are any number of midnight movies that people appreciate. I've got a soft spot for things like Robot Monster and Plan 9 from Outer Space. Anyway, that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up. Anytime you give it a thumbs up, it helps the channel so that I can do more of this stuff for longer. You can also support the channel by shouting me a coffee at ko-fi.com/paleocinema. You can support the channel as a patron at patreon.com/paleocinema. Next time around, I should have some horror movies that are being sent to me by Umbrella, which I haven't seen and I'm really looking forward to, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So in the meantime, look after yourselves. Enjoy spring if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, while I kind of slowly go into depression with autumn here. Still, the weather's quite nice today, and I'm going to enjoy whichever days we have left that still have great weather. So in the meantime, look after yourselves. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Grab some midnight movies out of your collection, sit back with your popcorn and whiskey and just enjoy yourself. And I'll catch you next time.